Chapter 311, Rejuvenation. What do you think? He Han Shao intentionally laughed lewdly, his face sporting a lecherous look. When he looked at Valentina, he deliberately stared at her busty curves. Branches had entwined tightly around Valentina, who was wearing a fiery red robe alongside the phoenix. The wood elite zombie had commanded the huge branches to become as soft as snakes, but no matter how soft the branches were, there would be some sharp edges. Valentina's magic robe had been sliced through in several places, the branches wrapped around her, revealing her snow-white skin at several places. When Valentina was restrained hand and foot, she immediately had the wrong idea. The moment she saw Han Shao reveal such a lecherous gaze, her heart was immediately plunged into chaos. She glared angrily and anxiously at Han Shao before attempting to commit suicide. Helen, no. The phoenix was able to sense Valentina's thoughts, so she quickly called out to stop the woman. Unfortunately, the phoenix was wrapped so tight that it couldn't move at all, so she was unable to reach Valentina. Valentina, who was trying to commit suicide by biting her own tongue, suddenly felt her entire body drain of strength. She didn't even have the strength to hurt herself. Right after that, she saw Han Shao walk over, reaching out with his large hands and touching her white and long neck. When that happened, a wave of strange power flowed into her body from Han Shao's coarse hands, causing her to gradually lose strength completely. HMPH, I have no interest in your body for now. You don't need to be so anxious to commit suicide. Han Shao snorted coldly, then slapped Valentina unconscious with one hand before grabbing her and flying into the sky. Han Shao's voice rang out from afar when the branches restraining the phoenix slowly fell onto the ground. Tell the Helen dukedom to prepare 1,000,000 gold coins. I'll return her only after that. Otherwise prepare to receive her corpse. The phoenix felt the branches around her slowly loosen. She watched Han Shao as he flew further and further away while carrying Valentina. She spoke in a wry, crisp tone. 1,000,000 gold coins? If her people knew that she was captured, they would only think about how to revolt. What should I do? Han Shao was already far in the distance and didn't hear the phoenix's words. After capturing Valentina alive, he rested a bit at the depths of the valley in order to replenish his mental energy and magical yuan. When Han Shao returned to the mountain with the bald top once again after half a day, he could tell from the shattered rocks on the mountain that another intense battle had occurred after he'd left. Han Shao naturally was unaware of the final result of the battle between the Calamity Church and the Church of Light. When he arrived at the foot of the mountain, Han Shao used the Earth Elite Zombie to use the strength of the earth to summon the 6 magic crystal cannons once again. Han Shao summoned several zombie warriors to push the 6 magic crystal cannons forward, then used 2 yin demons to survey the surroundings before slowly started walking in the direction of Bretel City. If Han Shao flew, he naturally could return to Bretel City in a matter of minutes. However, he was transporting 6 magic crystal cannons right now, so he had to avoid the soldiers of other dukedoms during the journey as well and couldn't fly at full speed. On the night of the second day, Han Shao commanded the zombie warriors to take the magical crystal cannons to a hidden forest. As he slowly advanced with the zombie warriors, Han Shao placed the 2 yin demons at his side to cover his flanks. Suddenly, Han Shao summoned the Earth Elite Zombie and hid the 6 magical crystal cannons into the earth. He then gazed at the depths of the darkness of the hidden woods with a cold expression and said with a sinister voice, "Come out." The strand of a silhouette slowly appeared from the depths of the darkness. It was the necromancer that Han Shao had met the previous day. As his figure slowly materialized, the necromancer gradually revealed his originally appearance like a lich that had crawled out of a tomb. This necromancer exuded a dense aura of rotten corpses. His gray and white pupils were like a zombie and had no focus, causing people to instinctively fear him under the creepy darkness of the light. Han Shao was a necromancer himself and naturally wouldn't fear the newcomer's terrifying image. Han Shao had his left arm around Valentina and frowned as he looked at the necromancer who'd appeared. Han Shao remarked, "It seems like your physical body is no longer here. You're held together from souls and undead creatures now. Just how many years have you existed for?" Others called necromancers the observers of the soul. Aside from the gods that were rumored to exist, necromancers necromancers were the people who understood the soul the most in this dimension. Powerful necromancers were able to cause their soul to live permanently through their understanding of the basic fundamentals of the soul. Of course, necromancers with an immortal soul could not likewise make their physical bodies immortal. Normal necromancers that had survived for a long time in the form of a soul would have to use the physical bodies of various powerful undead creatures and mix it with their own body. This was how their physical bodies would be filled with a chilly aura of death and not rot. The body of this necromancer who had appeared before Han Sha-O was clearly combined with a lich, a dark creature ranked even higher than evil knights. His pale face was filled with a sickly aura of death, while the hard-to-conceal smell of rotten flesh proved that his body was no longer pure. "I'm called Wolf. I'm 170 years old this year and am a Grand Magus necromancer in the Calamity Church." Since we both practice necromancy, of course you would know that it isn't a very difficult thing to prolong our life using our knowledge of souls as long as we aren't killed. Wolf looked at Han Sha-O with a smile and calmly talked about immortality. Han Sha-O nodded and said with a smile, "Of course. You only want to talk about immortality with me after following me for so long? Brian, your special talent. Your existence is a rare miracle for the Calamity Church. Previously we thought of lots of ways to recruit you for the Calamity Church, but it seems like we were all wrong. You were always one of ours." Grand Magus Wolf said to Han Sha-O with a sinister smile. The moment he said this, Han Sha-O was shocked and gazed towards Wolf with a gaze full of confusion. He frowned and said, "I never joined the Calamity Church. When did I become of your Calamity Church?" It seems that you don't even realize what you own." Wolf shook his head and exclaimed, then spoke with a smile. "You will know sooner or later. My reason for coming over here is to tell you that although the Church of Light lost quite a lot of Templars, Red Archbishop Kasi was still able to bring a group of Templars and walk out of the mountain alive. From now on, I think that the Church of Light is already viewing you as someone part of our church. It will be hard to avoid the endless threats of death coming from the Church of Light since you reside so openly in Bretel City. Regardless of whether you are willing or not, we will protect you from the shadows, but I hope that you will also be more vigilant." Han Sha-O was initially still very confused when he heard Wolf's words, but he was suddenly struck with brilliance after thinking for a moment. He took the tricolored bone staff out and looked meaningfully at the 170 years old Wolf, asking, "Is this bone staff a divine artifact belonging to your Calamity Church?" The dark smile on Wolf's face vanished as he immediately knelt before the staff, trembling as he chanted a series of names. His unfocused eyes suddenly released a pale green light as he bowed deeply. Meanwhile, he also raised his hands high to form some odd gestures as if he was prostrating himself before an evil god. The tricolored skeletal staff suddenly shot out 3 rays of faint yellow, blue and purple light. The 3 rays of light instantly landed on this ancient necromancer, causing Wolf to continuously kowtow shakingly as he writhed like a worm bathed in the 3 faint rays of light. When the light of the tricolored skeletal staff shone down on Wolf, Han Sha-O's completely drained mental energy actually miraculously recovered. On the other hand, the necromancer that was writhing on the ground had slowly begun to weaken. Han Sha-O could clearly feel the bone staff soak up the mental energy of the necromancer like a sponge. This process continued for a short while until the bone staff stopped shimmering. When the shimmer died, Han Sha-O's mental energy had actually been fully replenished. However, the body of the necromancer continued to writhe underneath the black robe at Han Sha-O's feet like a huge living tumor that kept on moving. Wolf's body shook uncontrollably as he continued the ancient chant. After draining quite a bit of his mental energy, the writhing of his body actually became more and more intense. After a final terrible howl, Wolf suddenly stood up from his prostrate position. The formerly ancient and pale appearance of Wolf had suddenly transformed to become an elegant young man full of a soft noble aura with sword-like brows and star-like eyes. The dense aura of rotten corpses that surrounded him had completely disappeared, his skin filled with a soft light similar to white jade. Wolf's originally sinister voice also became soft and tender as he exclaimed, "The feeling of youth is so wonderful." As Han Sha-O watched this transformation of Wolf in front of him, his surprise only grew. He looked at the rejuvenated Wolf in disbelief, then at the bone staff in his hands with bright eyes, and murmured, "Miraculous to miraculous." Chapter 312, Conditions. Isn't it unbelievable? Only the bone staff's divinity can allow us to obtain immortality while enjoying the wonders of youth. Grand Magus Wolf, alive for 170 years now, said proudly to Han Shao after taking a deep breath of fresh air. Han Shao's eyes sparkled with light as he looked greedily at the bone staff in his hands. His heart was filled with surprise and joy as he muttered, no wonder I kept on feeling that the bone staff would have other fantastic uses. I never would have thought that it would actually have such a miraculous effect. Wolf seemed to be very satisfied with Han Shao's surprise. Wolf looked only 20-something years old now and was filled with the elegance of a noble. He started carefully trimming his knife-like nails with a sharp knife that had suddenly appeared in his right hand. As Han Shao was still caught in the depths of his shock, Wolf had already finished trimming his nails and was joyously examining his white hands beneath the moonlight. He exclaimed, how many years has it been? Even since I merged with the Lich, my long and beautiful hands had disappeared. What replaced it were a pair of blade-like claws. My wonderful hands have finally appeared once again. I no longer need to hide in endless darkness and use a black robe to cover a body that can't be seen. After his body had merged with the old Lich, not only had it become full of the smell of rotten corpses, it also caused his body to resemble a cross between a human and a monster. Although Wolf had gained eternal life, he no longer dared to openly walk under public gaze. Otherwise, even if the Church of Light doesn't do anything, some adventurers who didn't know the truth would attack him after thinking him an undead creature. Han Shao was just as happy as Wolf. He studied the bone staff in his hands with interest but was unable to find the source of the mysterious power of rejuvenation. He didn't know how to cast it either. After hesitating for a while, Han Shao looked at Wolf with a smile. Perhaps you can tell me the secret of rejuvenation from this staff? Wolf smirked with his youthful face, shaking his head at Han Shao. If you admit that you belong to our Calamity Church and come back to the sacred grounds with me, I will help you obtain the true secrets of the divine bone staff. Han Shao snorted derisively, then placed the bone staff back into his space ring and said coldly, I'm so young, so I don't need this sort of mysterious power for now. If you have nothing else, then don't continue to disturb my journey. Then alright, please take care of yourself. I need to immediately return to the sacred grounds and report about what has happened over these few days. Wolf smiled with a nod, then looked at Han Shao a final time. He made a slight bow that was befitting standard ancient nobility etiquette and expressed his thanks. Thank you, Brian. You are an unbelievable person. I think that you must have received the favor of our God. We will have a lots of chance to meet in the future. Wolf tarried no longer after saying that. He slowly walked into the darkness with a joyous mood. After a while, when Han Shao couldn't even detect a sliver of Wolf's aura, did he summon the Earth Elite Zombie and had it spit out the 6 magic crystal cannons. Han Shao continued to travel towards Bretel City while using the Yin demons to survey his surroundings. On midday of the second day, Han Shao and a group of zombie warriors was walking on a shady and meandering path under the scorching sun. When he passed by a clear river, Han Shao couldn't help but temporarily stop as he gazed at the small river that blocked his way. There wasn't this sort of clean and clear river in the wet and dark other dimensions. Although undead creatures like the zombie warriors were not afraid of the corrosion of running water, this river didn't seem shallow. It wouldn't be an easy task for the zombie warriors to cross the river while pushing 6 magic crystal cannons. Magic crystal cannons were built using many valuable magical materials, and there were a few that would react very easily with water. Although Han Shao did not know the theory behind the magic crystal cannon operations, he did have some common sense. He couldn't be sure that whether some bad reactions would happen when these 6 magic crystal cannons were placed into water. The sunlight over his head was a bit bright, and since the shade was blocking some of it, long weird shadows were drawn on the ground. Han Shao hesitated as he gazed at the river that had appeared in front of him, then finally woke the Helentina, who'd been sleeping for quite some while. It had been nearly 2 days from the time when Han Shao had knocked Helentina unconscious. In order to avoid the trouble that would arise after Helentina woke up, Han Shao had just ignored her. Her stomach reacted before she was even conscious after the restrictive magical yuan had been withdrawn from her body. Gurgled. Helentina's flat stomach suddenly let out a hungry moan. At the start the sound was still very small, but as Helentina's bodily functions gradually recovered, the objection from her stomach became louder and louder. It was at that moment moment that Valentina slowly awoke. When she raised her head and saw Han Sha-oh smiling terribly, Valentina instinctively protected her body. She calmed herself a bit and stared at Han Sha-oh coldly. "What else do you want to do? I'm already done everything that can be done. What's the use of guarding yourself right now? I already tasted the miraculousness of your body when you were unconscious." It really made me mesmerized." Han Sha-oh smiled lecherously with an evil intent as he thought about Valentina's never-ending fierceness earlier than about the harm the Helen dukedom had caused for the people of Bretel City. As he expected, the moment Han Sha-oh's lecherous laughter sounded out, Valentina reacted like she'd been struck by lightning. She completely blinked out there with a pitiful look. However, her pitiful and despairing look only lasted for a moment before she focused her hateful gaze onto Han Sha-oh. After being stared at by Valentina's cold eyes full of endless hatred, even someone with as strong of a will as Han Sha-oh couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. It was as if a poisonous snake had silently neared the back of his neck and was planning to give him the fatal strike at any moment. After that, Valentina remained silent no matter what Han Sha-oh said. She ignored the objections of her stomach and continued to gaze at Han Sha-oh using such a cold, vengeful stare that made Han Sha-oh feel extremely uncomfortable. Han Sha-oh was finally defeated after a while. He waved his head while feeling his scalp prickle with numbness. "Damn it, I have no interest in a woman like you. I need you to exchange for a ransom of 1,000,000 gold coins. I won't easily do anything to you." "Okay, now I admit that I was just lying to you just now. Look, your 6 magic crystal cannons are right there. Now tell me, are the magic crystal cannons afraid of water?" Valentina's expression of endless hatred softened slightly when Han Sha-oh finished speaking, but she still glared at him with suspicion. She finally let out a sigh and asked, "You really did nothing to me?" "No shit, you have hands and feet. Now I'm not tying you up. Don't you know how to check yourself?" Han Sha-oh swore, then said quietly, "However, with your slutty name out there, you probably aren't a virgin anymore. You really might not be able to find anything." Whap! Valentina casually grabbed a handful of shattered rocks and threw it on Han Sha-oh. She glared at Han Sha-oh in anger and roared, "All you shitty men are the same." The moment she said that, Valentina squeezed her legs with a bit of embarrassment. After checking with an unknown method, she actually displayed a bit of happiness. When she saw Han Sha-oh turn around remotely, a thought struck her and she quickly took out her magical staff to chant a high-ranked fire spell, Flame Catastrophe. Unfortunately for Valentina, she didn't find any mental energy that she could use when she chanted the incantation and waved the magical staff. She immediately looked at Han Sha-oh in shock while her inner self was filled with terror. She yelled in frantic panic, "Evil, filthy necromancer, what did you do to me?" Why don't I have a hint of mental strength left? Han Sha-oh saw all of Valentina's actions behind his back through a yin demon. He turned around as if nothing happened and smiled brilliantly. "Don't waste your strength. Don't think about chanting a single spell before I release you." But you don't need to worry. As long as your Phoenix sister brings 1,000,000 gold coins over, I will let you go completely unharmed, and you will also be able to use your mental strength again." Valentina was shocked the moment he said that. She was surprised about Han Sha-oh's all-encompassing ability. Valentina was a fire mage who wasn't weak at all. According to what she knew, restraining mental strength wasn't something that normal people could do. Even mages at the level of Grand Magus would need the aid of some magical scrolls or formations in order to constrain a archmage's mental strength. She found it unbelievable that Han Sha-oh could have the amazing power to constrain mental strength at such a young age. However, after her surprise, Valentina very quickly thought of some of the people who had ulterior motives in her Helen Empire. She understood that once those people find out that she was captured alive, they would just take the chance to control the Helen Duchy. They absolutely would not take out 1,000,000 gold coins to get her back. Even Duke Benedict from the Benson dukedom that seemed to be madly pursuing her would probably only consider sending his army out to the Helen Empire and use this chance to make it his own. "Just kill me, no one will come for me." "Not a single person." Valentina shook her head pitifully and replied while looking at Han Sha-oh with despair. Chapter 313, Returning to the City. "Humphrey, don't try that on me. I won't let you go unless I receive 1,000,000 gold coins." Valentina was notorious throughout the 7 Grand Duchies for her insidious schemes. Han Sha-oh naturally wouldn't believe the words randomly spewing from her mouth. He looked coldly at Valentina and said the magic crystal cannons are made of many rare magic materials. I want to know if they are afraid of water. The first thing Valentina did upon waking up was look around. Her eyes had taking notes of the group of zombie warriors surrounding the 6 magic crystal cannons at the river's bank. She was only distracted because Han Shao had postured he'd tainted her body. It angered her now that Han Shao mentioned the magic crystal cannons again. She looked at him and shouted in fury, "Don't expect to get any useful information from my mouth, you damnable bandit." "Bandit? Haha, your Helen Duchy is the true bandit. You've pillaged the Bretel city day and night for years. From a big city with hundreds of thousand people, it's now a deserted city with dozens of thousand people. The people in the city have long since lost their hopes and dreams in life. It's all thanks to you people. Yet you still have the face to say that I'm the bandit, haha." Han Shao recalled the miserable sight of people who lacked the clothes to cover their bodies and the food to fill their stomachs on his way to the Bretel city. His heart ached with grievances. Valentina laughed heartily upon hearing his words. She coldly said, "Such is war. When your Lancelot Empire invaded us 7 grand duchies in the past, didn't you also burn and pillage us? If we hadn't allied to resist and drive you back, I'm afraid that all of our people would have become slaves already." Valentina's words also made sense. Han Shao pondered for a bit and figured that he shouldn't sink in further in this matter. Seeing Valentina unwilling to say any more, he said in a cold voice, "It's not like I can't do anything just because you don't say anything, just that I will waste a little more time. To a necromancer, costly manpower is never a problem." Han Shao no longer cared about Valentina after speaking. He started to chant the incantation to summon the Wood Elite Zombie. Han Shao issued a command when the Wood Elite Zombie appeared. The latter uprooted the big trees one by one like he was the lord of this forest. The Demon Slayer Edge then cut them into sections with the Wood Elite Zombie tying them together by soft branches. Han Shao and the Wood Elite Zombie had built 6 new rafts after half an hour. During this process, Valentina watched Han Shao and the Wood Elite Zombie closely while sneaking bread from her space ring. Perhaps she'd been hungry for too long, as she swallowed the bread very quickly. Upon completion, the zombie warriors pushed the rafts towards the river. Valentina finally couldn't help but lamented, "No wonder the Church of Light wants to kill you. You can actually summon such miraculous undead creatures." Valentina didn't know that the Wood Elite Zombie had in fact been refined from the most ordinary of zombie warrior. As the zombie warrior pushed the 6 rafts onto the river and placed the 6 magic crystal cannons on the rafts, Han Shao breathed a soft sigh of relief. He sent the Wood Elite Zombie and the zombie warriors return to the strange dimension. 4 zombie warriors paddled one raft. When the zombie warriors mobilized their force, the 6 loaded rafts began to slowly move to the other side of the banks. Han Shao once again went over behind Valentina at this moment and gently tapped the back of her neck. He said softly and lowly, "You should rest." Han Shao easily lifted Valentina up after knocking her unconscious. He then slowly flew over onto a raft and commanded the zombie warriors to cross the river. Han Shao avoided some scattered bandit groups along the way, as well as some mercenary bands who'd made a living in the near vicinity. After a trip without any surprise, he finally arrived at Bretel City. In the spring night, the temperature was just right. The bright moonlight shone gently upon the earth. This could have been a truly warm, peaceful night if it weren't for the zombie warriors pushing the magic crystal cannons, exuding the sense of death. When they approached the Bretel city's gates, the soldiers on the city wall were startled by the moonlight reflecting from the magic crystal cannons. Seeing 6 huge cannons pointing towards the city's fortress with some stiff moving figures behind, the soldiers immediately paled in horror. "Who is it?" the soldiers manning the cannons at the city's gates shouted to the distance before Han Shao drew near. Compared to previously, the various potholes and pockmarks that had dotted Bretel City had all been perfectly patched up. The gates changed to enormous ones of dark steel. Having experienced the last crusade against the bandits, the initially cowardly soldiers now possessed somewhat strong and calm bearings. The armor of the soldiers reflected the moon's radiance in a strange manner on the city walls. The soldiers were stirring to action, hurriedly applying the arrows and raising their bows to aim at the zombie warriors. Warning calls echoed and more soldiers gathered on the fortress, all of them aiming aiming their bows below. After his last experience when he'd entered the city without meeting any defenses, Han Shao understood that the Bretel city was no longer the same in the face of these soldiers' vigilance. The soldiers couldn't see Han Shao's face clearly because of the long distance, but he could clearly see their figures above the fortress. "Open the gates for me, you bastards. You don't recognize even me." Han Shao's voice suddenly rang out and spread throughout the city. "The city lord, it's the city lord. The city lord has returned." The soldiers on the fortress couldn't see Han Shao clearly but could still recognize his voice. Everyone cheered with pleasant surprise, opening the city's gates slowly. After the gates opened wide, the zombie warriors finally transported the heavy magic crystal cannons into the Bretel city. Even though it was evening, Fogg immediately rushed to meet Han Shao upon receiving the news. This is. Fogg bowed to pay respects to Han Shao upon arriving. When he swept a glance to see the zombie warriors pushing the 6 magic crystal cannons, Fogg couldn't help exclaim with surprise and excitement. These are magic crystal cannons, also called the powerful lightning god. The cheapest one costs at least 100,000 gold coins for this type of magic crystal cannons. They can release terrifying offensive power through magic crystal ores. These magic crystal cannons are simply great invincible weapons in the battlefield. "Your lordship, where did you get these from?" Fogg was indeed worthy of being a veteran who'd been through the baptism of years in the battlefield. He actually recognized the 6 magic crystal cannons and even knew of their name, Lightning God. Han Shao only knew that they were magic crystal cannons. As for what type and what size, he was clueless. Hearing Fogg so knowledgeable about magic crystal cannons, Han Shao responded delightedly, "Is that so? Then you must know how to use these magic crystal cannons?" "Of course. This type of magic crystal cannon is extremely easy to use as long as we have enough magic crystal ores. Each shot of this lightning god is equivalent to an extremely powerful attack of an archmage if there is enough power. These magic crystal cannons can maintain continuous discharges without running out if given enough power," Fogg said with a confident smile as he walked towards a magic crystal cannon. It was unclear what he did when the cannon suddenly shook a little and a small box cracked out from its bottom. The magic crystal ores available here are enough for 5-6 shots." Hey, a bandit group has been wandering around the vicinity of Bretel City recently. It seems they intended to make a move again. I was worried about how to deal with them. Now with the 6 magic crystal cannons here, I'll make them regret their foolish thoughts. Fogg had a cold smile on his face as he looked at the 6 magic crystal cannons and gritted his teeth. It looked like he intended to use these 6 magic crystal cannons to carry out a grand deed. "Alright then, these 6 magic crystal cannons are under your care." Han Shao instantly issued this order before walking straight towards the city lord's mansion. Fogg and the soldiers had noticed the stunning unconscious Helentina under Han Shao's arm from the start. Of course they wouldn't ask about the city lord's private affairs. When they saw Han Shao walk to the direction of the city lord's mansion, these people's thieving eyes ran over Helentina's charming body several times over while chuckling wickedly in their hearts. Therefore, after Han Shui had returned with Helentina back to the Bretel city that night, some rumors and gossip spread throughout the city. The people didn't know of Helentina's identity, but her beauty had made a deep impression on the soldiers. They were either admiring or jealous of Han Shao, and so various rumors and evil speculations appeared. Upon bringing Helentina to the city lord's mansion, Han Shao impatiently went straight to the secret chamber. He had sensed a distant call just a short while after he'd returned to the Bretel city. This call was weak and fragile, as if it was 1,000 mountains and seas away. However, Han Shao's consciousness at the separate demon realm could naturally perceive it. It seemed that the fire elite zombie had finally emerged. Chapter 314, A Strong Emergence. The call from the depths of his soul grew 5 times more urgent once Han Shao entered the cemetery of death. It seemed that the fire elite zombie had also felt his presence because of the shortened distance. Without delaying for a second, Han Shao utilized the art of the mnemonic 9th heavens to fly straight to the depths of the dark forest. Since he was familiar with the way, it didn't take long to reach the place of extreme fire. Han Shao's currently strength had far exceeded the time he'd last been here. He immediately felt the enormous presence of the Lord of the Flames once he arrived at the area. The fire elite zombie was currently within its blazing kingdom. Han Shao would face a headache of a problem if he wanted to enter the place of extreme fire and sneakily lift the magic matrix binding the fire elite zombie. The elite zombies of 5 elements could only be formed through the interconnecting matrices through a secret method using the matrices to gather the elements of heavens and earth in an entire region. However, when an elite zombie took shape, it could only officially emerge when the matrix shackling it was lifted. Otherwise the fire elite zombie wouldn't have had to call out to Han Shao so urgently. The rocks in this mountain valley had been scarred a brown red after the great battle last time. There were even some bubbling hot springs in the vast warm mountain valley now. Han Shao stood blankly in the mountain valley, frowning as he thought of a way to enter the place of extreme fire and lift the matrix binding the fire elite zombie. It was simply impossible to advance safely and soundly with the Lord of the Flames in the area. Therefore Han Shao just remained there frowning and thinking, but couldn't think of a good way. The call from the fire elite zombie was becoming increasingly stronger since he'd felt Han Shao's presence. The zombie was anxiously conveying his urgent desire to break free of his restraints. Han Shao's heart was on fire with anxiety as well. He finally decided to take a risk and ventured into the place of extreme fire after some hesitation. Han Shao slowly dove down into one of the numerous hot springs. The warm water enveloped his body, dispelling all of the exhaustion from his trip. However, the pressure from the Lord of the Flames wasn't something so easily dissolved. Han Shao tapped around with the Demon Slayer edge at the bottom of the spring, trying to find a crack to enter the place of extreme fire. It took some time before Han Shao finally pried open 2 huge rocks and found a way in. A green-black veil shrouded his body as soon as he entered the crack. He slowly made his way down the crack into the place of extreme fire. The deeper he went, the higher the temperature spiked. Firelight danced around him as brilliant as beautiful flame flowers. Han Shao had wrapped himself in a protective shield and could clearly observe all of the events around him. The 2 cliffs on either side were burning red as he passed by them. Some flexible creatures that looked like fire snakes hid themselves in the cracks of the cliff, surrounded by several scorching demons lying dormant. It seemed that they didn't notice Han Shao's existence and let him proceed all the way into the underground. A scorching demon general within another crack discovered him when he was almost at his destination. The scorching demon general rose and waved his arm once, sending a flame shooting straight at Han Shao. Han Shao raised his hand slightly and sent out a cloud of purple light. The flame shot by the scorching demon general had yet to draw close when it disappeared into faint smoke in midair. As the cold breath from the light touched the flame, the 2 turned into a bright array of flame stars that slowly scattered down onto the place of extreme fire. The inside of the place of extreme fire was an enormous area of magma. The flame stars which had fallen caused the calmly bubbling lava to boil as if it had felt the presence of the scorching demon general. The air bubbles floated up and became as big as a cup, the already blazing temperature getting even hotter. A huge skull slowly emerged from the middle of the melting hot lava. The more than 10-meter long body of the Lord of the Flames was next to arrive, spraying the flames in the place of extreme fire in all directions. He was instantly furious upon sensing the presence of a human. "How you!" Exclamation mark! A terrifying howl pierced the sky, the entire place of extreme fire seemingly trembling in terror. The burning red lava rocks on 2 sides shuddered as they broke loose. Amidst the falling rocks, the enormous head of the Lord of the Flames scanned its surroundings. The ear-splitting sounds of the crumbling cliffs rang out, accompanied by the billowing flames that instantly spread throughout the place of extreme fire. Within the flames, Han Shao's azure shield became a particularly conspicuous existence. His misery couldn't be described by words in the face of the anger from this super-rank magic creature, the Lord of the Flames. Han Shao continuously increased his output of magical yuan to firmly protect the area where he was standing. Han Shao's power had indeed soared after reaching the separate demon realm. Otherwise his shield would have long since shattered from the violent attacks of the flames from all sides. Han Shao's face flushed blood red, his shield crackling and popping. However, he could still resist the surging temperature, albeit with a few drops of sweat slowly dripping from his forehead. The Lord of the Flames' body emerged from the middle of the melting hot magma with his terrifying roar, surrounded by raging churning flames. Some of the flames were more than 10 meters in length, like soaring fire dragons. The power of Helentina's dance of the fire snakes couldn't even compare to this awe-inspiring spectacle. Seeing that his omnidirectional attack wasn't working, the Lord of the Flames screamed his fury to the sky. 3 fire dragons of over 10 meters in length drew a twisted path toward Han Shao. They greedily absorbed the sky-high flames along their way, leaving the place of extreme fire almost barren by the time they'd reached Han Shao. The length of the 3 fire dragons had remained unchanged, but their width had quintupled. They turned into 3 enormous dragons, their bodies emitting raging fiery flames destructive enough to burn the entire mountain valley to ashes. Han Shao could keep his cool in the face of the omnidirectional attack from the Lord of the Flames. But when the attacks were concentrated on him, the pressure of the flames seemed to increase 10 times over. Han Shao was constantly communicating with the fire elite zombie deep in the magma while trying to craft a defense with all of his energy. The Demon Slayer Edge had swallowed a great deal of souls. Now that it was filled with a massive reservoir of magical yuan, the weapon instantly releasing a terrifyingly evil air upon being activated. The purple flame of the mystical glacial spell fire had ultimately transformed into purple spell fire of extreme cold. Purple flowers of spell fire blossomed from the Demon Slayer Edge. They floated elegantly around Han Shao and the blade as if the two were delicate flower stamens. Extreme cold purple flame was the culmination of the mystical glacial spell fire. Catalyzed from an enormous amount of magical yuan, it was so terrifyingly cold that it could freeze everything in the world. When the flakes of purple spell fire drifted gracefully out of the blade, the surroundings actually started to snow. Each petal of the snow flowers blended with the purple flames, forming a large block of solid purple ice that tightly enveloped Han Shao and the Demon Slayer Edge. Han Shao seemed to have turned into a translucent crystal block of ice. The flames in the place of extreme fire now shone with a brilliant purple-red luster. The beautiful solid block of ice became increasingly larger as Han Shao poured more magical yuan into it until it finally covered a width of more than 10 meters. Han Shao continued to circulate magical yuan from within, making even more cold smoke rise from the ice. The 3 massive fire dragons had yet to reach the solid block of ice when thick mist blew up from the high temperature, coming in contact with the icy cold. The entire place of extreme fire was shrouded quickly in mist. The 3 fire dragons assaulted the square 10 meters wide solid ice block in accordance with the roar from the Lord of the Flames. Crack! Rumbled out as the terrifying sounds of battle echoed, radiant purple and red lights constantly flashing in the smoke, a testament to the ferocity of the fire dragon's assault. Large chunks of ice fell into the place of extreme fire, sending gigantic spouts of lava splashing upwards. The Lord of the Flames growled as it imposed its will over the place of extreme fire, causing more burning lava to spew out towards the center of the smoke. Han Shao pushed his magical yuan to the extreme but was still unable to stop the flames' encroachment. Under the multi-layered assault, the 10 meters wide solid ice block melted rapidly and was reduced to a quarter of its size after just a moment. Flames covered the sky as fiery magma surged and boiled. Han Shao's magical yuan wasn't endless and he was slowly exhausted. Han Shao urgently contacted the fire elite zombie while starting to chant a long magic incantation. Suddenly a thick layer of black clouds appeared on the ice block that was 3 meters long. Amidst the thick clouds, glossy white bones entangled with each other to form a huge bone cage enclosing the solid ice block. PTH, break! Han Shao abruptly shouted at 2 words that echoed in the place of extreme fire. The bone cage suddenly transformed from translucent to pitch black, emitting dark smoke. Suddenly the walls around the matrix Han Shao had arranged several months ago burst open with a series of cracks. At this moment the fire element that had been pouring towards the center of the place of extreme fire suddenly halted. As the walls crumbled into pieces, a gorgeous lotus slowly rose up from the bubbling magma. Chapter 315 Imprint. The fire lotus rotated as it sprouted, accompanied by bright red scathing bubbles. When the rhizomes emerged from the magma, the petals quickly unfolded, revealing the fire elite zombie at the center. The fire elite zombie had a big head and ruddy skin that was the color of blood. Everything below its waist was still wrapped in the flower. The armor on its body seemed to have been formed from deep red flowers, covering its entire body except for its face. The exposed body of the fire elite zombie twisted quickly within the flower. The petals on its waist slowly peeled backwards. The pretty dazzling red petals of the fire lotus contracted, condensing into an armor on the lower body and legs of the fire elite zombie. The enormous amount of fire element force in the surroundings gathered agitatedly towards the fire elite zombie during this process. After the crazy explosion around the formation, the fire element force condensed into fire stars that filled the sky and flowed towards the fire elite zombie like a flaming Milky Way. The blazing temperature emitted from the fire elite zombie's body and slowly formed a lotus pattern in the spot between its eyebrows. The pattern was blurred at first, gradually becoming clearer and clearer. Ultimately it shrank into a small fire lotus that was 100 times smaller than the one that had nurtured it and engraved itself on the fire elite zombie's glabella. The huge fire lotus that enveloped the fire elite zombie slowly shrank and disappeared. When the lotus imprint on his glabella appeared, the fire lotus beneath its feet had also vanished without a trace. The body of the fire elite zombie was thoroughly red. When its deep red eyes turned to look at Han Shao-Oh's body, its big head shook slightly. It opened his mouth wide to take in a deep breath. The flames were still surging around Han Shao-Oh's body and frantically eroding his shield. As the fire elite zombie inhaled deeply, beams of red light flew into his mouth, entering his belly through his throat. The surging flames vanished, but the ice block wrapped around Han Shao-Oh was still standing strong. When he saw the fire elite zombie emerge, Han Shao-Oh stopped circulating his magical yuan and slowly walked towards the crack. The Lord of the Flames, who'd been constantly howling, immediately stopped his ruckus upon seeing the fire elite zombie appear from within the lotus. It focused all of his attention on the latter. When the lotus imprint formed between its eyebrows, the fire elite zombie directed its gaze at the Lord of the Flames as if exchanging some conversation with him. The furious Lord of the Flames gradually calmed down. As Han Shao slowly floated up towards the crack, he felt a deep maternal love permeating throughout the extreme place of fire. The Lord of the Flames had completely relaxed. Its huge palm lifted the fire elite zombie up as they used a mysterious method to communicate. Since the fire elite zombie had emerged, Han Shao knew that the former would find him through the connection established by his blood essence due to the constraints of the demonic magic. Not to mention that the little skeleton had been the one to bring the fire elite zombie over from the other dimension. Even though the fire elite zombie possessed consciousness and high intelligence after being refined by the demonic method, the soul brand in the depths of his soul hadn't changed much. Han Shao wasn't worried that he wouldn't be able to recognize his master. Han Shao departed easily as the Lord of the Flames had stopped trying to kill him. Shooting back up to the surface, he didn't encounter any obstacles before finally arriving at the center of the mountain valley. When he returned to the mountain valley, Han Shao immediately ordered the fire elite zombie to collect various strange ores from the extreme place of fire. Then he stayed in the mountain valley to wait for the fire elite zombie's task to be completed. The fire elite zombie and the Lord of the Flames had spent several months together in the extreme place of fire for months. During this time, the latter had considered the fire elite zombie to be his own child. Since both of them had absorbed the fire element force in the surroundings, they naturally had the same presence that made them feel even more intimate towards each other. Therefore Han Shao understood that these two originally different beings had certainly developed deep feelings towards each other. When the fire elite zombie left the fire lotus, it meant that he'd no longer continued to stay in the extreme place of fire. Since he had to leave, the two different beings would obviously have to part ways, so Han Shao didn't disturb them. As Han Shao was comfortably lying around and enjoying a hot spring in the mountain valley, a string of raging flames appeared from an unknown position and instantly drowned Han Shao in heat. The hot spring boiled and bubbled. Han Shao immediately jumped out, hot mist emitting from his body. "Who dares!" Han Shao leapt leapt into the air and let out a loud shout. He released purple spell fire from his two hands and extinguished all the flames on his body, then coldly observed his surroundings. The two yin demons drifted around the mountain valley after being released, paying attention to every change. Han Shao also sent out his consciousness to survey the area. He harbored a strong killing intent towards the ambushers. 7 or 8 red magic bullets shot toward Han Shao from the fiery red cliffs around the outskirts of the mountain valley. He wasn't an easy target now that his guard was up. A purple light quickly and cleanly knocked the magic bullets out of the air. As soon as the magic bullets were flung back, fireballs, firewalls and fire snakes continuously appeared from all directions and hurtled toward Han Shao. The two yin demons couldn't find any traces of the attackers after searching for a short time period. Only when Han Shao destroyed 2 fire snakes did his consciousness felt a faint magic fluctuation. The two yin demons immediately drew close to see a fiery globe high on a rock wall. That fiery globe was a magic shield cast by fire mages. A blurry shadow inside was waving a magic staff to fire out attack after attack. The incantations were blocked out since the mage was within the cover of magic, so Han Shao couldn't hear any sounds. Humphrey, no need to hide, Fire Grand Magus Marso. Han Shao snorted derisively and quickly drifted over a series of popping and banging sounds ringing on his way there. He deflected all of the fire magic attacks fired at him. The original still fire shield suddenly shot into the sky, the blurry shadow slowly becoming clearer amidst the random sparks. It was indeed Fire Grand Magus Marso of the Brute Merchant Alliance who'd appeared last time at the battle in the mountain valley. Han Shao and her had been allies. However, they had parted ways on not so pleasant terms after the unhappy predicament in the place of extreme fire. It was unexpected that Marso was still probing the place of extreme fire and had run into Han Shao by coincidence. Marso had been inwardly suspicious of Han Shao about the sudden disappearance of the Fire Lotus. Now that she saw Han Shao appear here again, she was certain in her heart that he'd tricked her last time. Moreover, she had already harbored resentment toward Han Shao in her heart but couldn't make a move as her mental strength had been exhausted. Meeting him here this time, in addition to the temptation of the fire attribute treasure, had given her the courage to take a risk and attack Han Shao. Seeing that she'd been identified and that Han Shao could calmly deal with her various fire magic attacks, Marso immediately realized that Han Shao's strength had made terrifying progress. Therefore she needed to leave as quickly as possible. Hey, running so soon? Where do you think you're going? Han Shao coldly mocked as he rapidly shot towards Marso. The Demon Slayer Edge had appeared in his hand at an unknown time. The scenery of the mountain valley quickly fell behind in their speed. Marso still had the spare power to release firewalls to obstruct Han Shao as she ran. However, the latter just simply ignored the blockades and rampaged forward. Han Shao's body became charred in large patches as he did so, the burned skin scattering with the wind, and new skin appeared underneath, still as clean and glossy as before. Even though his eyebrows had been burned to a crisp, they regrew after just a moment. Han Shao had gone from looking extremely bedraggled to restoring his carefree and dashing manner during the pursuit. Not far behind Han Shao, a fiery red shadow bolted madly like a raging flame. Dried plants immediately erupted into flames in every place it passed through in the mountain valley. All things that could burn went up in intense flames. Fire Grand Magus Marso used the levitation skill to flee in a hurry, her heart filled with horror. She hadn't expected Han Shao's strength to be so terrifying that her deliberate ambush couldn't even injure him. Han Shao's flight speed was too fast too, as the distance between them became increasingly smaller. Marso was greatly anxious upon seeing that Han Shao would catch up with her very soon. Ah, if it isn't Grand Magus Marso! A surprised cry suddenly rang out from the depths of the forest as Marso was flying by. A beautifully dressed group of adventurers looked up at Marso inside the fire globe. The escaping Marso looked down to see the team of adventurers and heaved a sigh of relief. She landed beside them and hastily said to them, "There's a killer from an enemy empire chasing me. Everyone get ready for a fight." Marso and this team of adventurers must have been acquaintances. They immediately looked furious upon hearing her words, each readying their weapons and arrows. They aimed directly at Han Shao in the air, only waiting for him to draw nearer to instantly make a move.